Welcome to this new Flight Simulator update movie. In this movie, we're gonna look at two builds of sim update number 14 beta, right? Because there were two updates this week. So let's start with the first one. The first one was released on the 29th of February, if I'm correct. Yeah, that's correct. So that's let's say the first build, right? So that's really cool. Um, and what's being fixed in that version is, well, first of all, there's some new features and some new content. First of all, there's the new Saurus SR22T G6 model with custom engine simulation, book accurate performance, and extensive perspective plus NXI features, right? Those NXI features are referring to the G1000 NXI features. So that's cool, right? Um, and I'd say besides that, I would say there's some other cool stuff. So I'd say looking at the other fixes, there are some general fixes, and that's always, I would say, always are those fixes are there. First of all, the most irritating bug for everyone who was participating in the beta is the bug where the assistant settings would reset every time. And it was a really frustrating one that has been fixed, as well as the automated weather report temperature reading has been updated. Then there are some fixes where especially with the logbook, right? So if you were finished flying, or if you just opened Flight Simulator and then went to the logbook, there was a small freeze for a few seconds before the content was being shown, and that's now being fixed. Then there are some weather fixes. First of all, there's they fixed an issue where the sim occasionally retrieves obsolete weather data. Well, that doesn't make sense, right? Because the weather is changing. As well as they improved the transition during cloud coverage updates, and they fixed an issue where the clouds don't load when starting a flight. And I've seen that one once where I started a flight and then there were, I say, no clouds, and then a few seconds later on there were some clouds. Then for the glass cockpits, the G1000 NXI, they have fixed a bug where the control pad mode would change back to COM when exiting the XPDR mode, right? Transponder code with a nav or the cursor buttons, as well as the Garmin GNS 430 and 530W. There was an issue where you could load a flight, but there was an issue with I would say, when the GNS was already powered on, right? So then it would, I would say, result in an issue where the unit no longer would acquire the GPS satellites, which is a kind of mandatory, right? And that's also now being fixed, so really cool. The second one is a fixed issue where the runway lag was never added for departures, right? So normally for departures, you can add the runway lag, and that was not done. Then for the aircraft, first of all, there's a general fix where it's now possible to slow down the simulation speed from 1/16 and 1/16, 1/8 and 1/16 of real time, right? So slowing down so you can, let's say, kind of practice, or let's say kind of make a nice video about it. And there's some news about the A320 Neo V2. There were some issues with it where it results in application crashes, especially on the console, right? Which means on the Xbox. And the crash rate was that high that they decided not to ship it as part of this update. At least that's as far as I know what's currently the standpoint. Maybe it will change. Then we've got the Bell 407. They fixed the checklist auto start. The auto start sequence now works as for the Boeing 747 and 787. They did some general performance optimizations for consoles and some hardware configurations. They are not very clear on what kind of hardware configurations those were, but it looks like that they optimized some things. Then the new Saurus SR22T, right? So it's completely new brand, new art, and model of the aircraft. So completely also they reworked the flight model and the performance featuring, right? The CFD with book accurate performance and pilot tested handling, modern propeller system, new turbo fuel engine systems, custom ECU engine computer, and EGT CHT simulation, as well as the custom lean misfire detonation and engine failure simulation modes. Then, of course, there's the G1000 NXI add-on, and the G1000 NXI delivers a lot of nice functionalities for this aircraft. First of all, the full screen engine page with the NTI status and the fuel flow targets, as well as the full screen fuel management page. So you can now say really control the fuel correctly. Then in addition to that, they had the weight and balance page will now include the graphical center of gravity envelope, as well as the trip planning page with automatic and manual modes, right? So you've got now two modes which you can put a planning page in. Massive suite of interactive checklists, as well as the MFD destination infox, PFD power gauge, gaggle indicator, GS and TS, and frequency loading menus on the airport, and waypoint inf pages. So it's likely all those things which you already saw in other aircrafts, which are using the G1000 NXI, you will likely see these features also in this aircraft. Then there's the flight in known icing and TKS simulation, right? So it looks like they added some icing functionality, as well as they stabilized the approach system with the PFD alerting and monitoring for the bar mismatch, the crosswind, tailwind, flaps, and other cool things. Next to that, they updated the IS with custom reversion, reversionary mode version, as well as the lean assist, right? With lean, you can put a few more lean, then you will use less fuel, which is better for the fuel usage, better for the environment. As well as they fully modeled the GCU 479 Garmin Control Unit keypad with all the entry models. That's really cool. In addition to that, they added the new autopilot modes, the level, takeoff, and GA go around. And that's being added as autopilot modes, as well as the large suite of accurate CAS messages. Right, those are the warning messages and the alerts, which you can now acknowledge using the G1000 NXI. Then for the Top Gun Maverick, they fixed the aircraft wake in a Maverick landing challenge that was missing, and there are some peripherals which are fixed. First of all, there's the pause menu on the Oculus Touch left controller switch from Y to menu button, as well as the anti-ice and aux fuel pump LEDs are now working properly with the Bravo throttle quadrant. So if you're using that one, that's some good news. As mentioned, this was the first one. So let's go back one page and go to the second one, because there was a second release of this nice update on the 1st of December, right? Which bumped it up eventually to version 1.35.21.0. So first of all, they added some new content, although I do think that some of the content was already there. So this one is interesting, and you need to keep an eye on this one. So the ATC is changing in Flight Simulator 2020, and it's mainly has to do with the runway selection when you are, I would say, arriving at an airport. So what you could do is using the world map, right? You could schedule your flight, including, let's say, then the runway where you want to land on and where you want to depart from. And I would say that sometimes resulted in some challenges because it was not honoring that. And that's why they said, okay, hey, we're going to make an option to say, if you set this assistance option to active mode, then it will use the runway which you selected in the flight plan. But if you deactivate it, then the HC will instruct you which active runway and approach you should use, and that's based on the current conditions. So if you want to make it more realistic, then you should deactivate it. By default, it will be set to active, so keep that in mind. Then there's the HC now clears a step to the next altitude. Yeah, that's the one I already, I would say, played around with a lot. So the HC previously, when I would say prior to this update, when you arrived at, let's say, 16,000 feet, then you were instructed to go to the next step. Now what happens roughly 2,000 feet before you hit, in this case, 16,000 feet, it will tell you, hey, you need to go to the next level, which makes sure that you can, I would say, adjust the autopilot and prevents that the aircraft, would say, stops in, let's say, climbing in between. That's good. Then there's also the HC vectoring bug fixes. So there's now assigning the correct clearance of when the first two waypoints were one over the other. And there's the assigning a new vector and clearance every time the user asks the HC for a new vector. As well as they added completely a new engine, right? Or the new aircraft. But that's the one we already discussed. So a little bit, I would say, surprised this one is still on the list. Then we've got some bug fixes. Again, several crashes, fix some localization bugs, performance optimizations for long flights, because in some cases for long flights, the performance was decreasing. And they fixed the HC that was mixing voices in localized languages, as well as the automated weather report temperature reading updated. So you can see there's a lot of overlap with the update which was released at the end of November. Then the marketplace also received an update where there was an issue with where the wish list would not sort properly in the marketplace, as well as the menu received an update where the fixer freeze when opening the logbook, but that one was also part of the November update. Navigation, the enhanced HC phraseology. Some of the improvements include the removal of the word for, eliminating the requirement to include altimeter settings in takeoff clearance. So this one was already part of an earlier build. So again, I'm a little bit surprised that this one is in the list. It looks like that they're kind of finalizing the release notes for the official release of this update. Then the weather, the snow and ice coverage accuracy has been improved in live weather, as well as they fixed an issue where the wind from a malformed meter was incorrectly read, and they fixed an issue where the sim occasionally retrieves obsolete weather, also discussed previously, and they improved the transition during cloud coverage updates, and they fixed an issue where clouds don't load when starting a flight. So I would say reading this, I would say I'm pretty sure that these are almost the final release notes for the update, right? Then for the glass cockpits, the G3000 and G5000, they fixed an issue when removing an airway entry lag where entry lag from the flight plan could sometimes corrupt the flight plan. That's being fixed, right? If you, for example, remove one of those lags, then your aircraft was, I would say, some kind of I would say, crazy mode, and that's now being fixed. Then the G1000 NXI. So it receives a lot of updates. First of all, they have added support for hardware keyboards. There's a new AS100 underscore control underscore pad underscore H events. And they fixed also an issue with the flight plan, as well as the one which was similar to the one, say, experienced in the G3000 and G5000. Then the autopilot, they will receive updates for the level and touch and go modes, as well as the MFD editor page menu pop up from the MFD's nearest airport page. There are several CAS alerts being added, right? So PFD alerts, software indicator, now flashes the color and changes to the appropriate labels with CAS messages. So that's really cool. And you also now need to acknowledge them, and then when you acknowledge them, then they also will be cancelled, right? Because of also, let's say, oral chimes continuously to it until you, let's say, confirm the alert. The other thing which they did is they show you the alerts in the order of priority, also really important. And they added support to the knob-based transponder code entry using H events, right? Using the keyword events. Then there are a lot of things which are specifically for aircraft developers, right? So they can use these kind of nice things. So I do expect, based on this, a lot of developers will update their aircraft if they're using the G1000 NXI and using that new functionality. Then the W221 also only for developers, so we'll not go into detail that much because we're going to go to the general section. And in the general section, at least I wouldn't call it general completely, because as you can see, there are a lot of fixes for specific aircrafts. If you would go to the list, right, what are the most interesting things? Well, first of all, there's the payload station weights that are set via SIM connector now properly displayed. That's a really important one. As well as or maybe the slowdown could be useful for you. And they fixed an issue that could cause the state of the avionics circuit depending features to be toggled on and off when no marker beacon circuit was present. The rest is all, I say, kind of very specific to very specific aircrafts. So we'll not go to that one for now. Then the external HUD, right? The minimized HUD will now display if an aircraft has more than 8 engines. It will show the power values. And for the helicopters specifically, there's the anti-stall protection is now disabled for the helicopters. Then we've got specific aircraft updates. So not the ones mentioned here, but more for the Airbus A310. For example, the radio stock broadcasting on KSNS 8 years after departing KSFO. And there's a vertical speed knob labeled as altitude knob in the tooltip. And the Airbus A320 V2, as mentioned, right, that one will likely not being shipped because I would say, there are simply too much crashes, especially when you're playing it on a console. Then the Bell of 407 also received tons of updates. Again, mainly to the rotor, right, the blade, brake, and weight changes, as well as the throttle governed RPM during startup and shutdown, performance enhancements or changes, fuel management improvements, localization, the FedEx tooltip, the fuel pressure gauge illumination, and the cold and dark mode state changes, as well as some corrections in the checklist. So that's cool. Boeing 787-747. General performance enhancements again. The weight and balance, an operational center of gravity margin is now considered now to avoid extreme center of gravity values when loading the aircraft. as well as there's a sim update where the ATC will now will know about your planned cruise altitude. It will assign you a flight level accordingly. That one is, I would say, kind of similar to the one which we discussed earlier. Then there are tons of checklist fixes, both generic, right, but also very specific to the aircraft. So keep an eye on those checklists because they've got changes in it, as well as the EFB specifically for the 787 received some spelling error fixes. You could now adjust. There's now three. You could already adjust the brightness, but there's now an option to automatically add it. And there are some things like, okay, the TOW field and the MTOW field are now, I would say, being fixed. And there's also the cap is now achievable. Then for the CG4, again, has to do with the HC. It will know, okay, which cruise altitude you defined in the flight plan. So cool. Then the SR22T, that's the one we already went to, say, as part of the previous update. So I will not go to this one because it's likely the same. The GM4, the Jenny from the Curtis Jenny, received some localization issue fixes, mainly to Korean, Polish, and Turkish. There are also now some fixes for that. And they fixed the broken auto pilot panel backlighting in TBM 930. Then for the Douglas DC-3, also a lot of fixes. First of all, the multiplayer issues, overlapping words on the warning labels, the radio altimeter appearing off above 400 feet, as well as the classic 8-way quick view controls fixed during the flight. And then there's some other fixes specifically for the Enhanced Edition, right? So this is only applicable to the Enhanced Edition. Improved low resolution text, as well as the missing panel texture for beacon light. And some other nice fixes, mainly related to both the state of the flaps, but also to the radar and the cold and dark mode. Then the Grumman G21 Goose. First of all, the AI co-pilot completes the checklist for you in evaluation mode. There's the attitude indicator, doesn't provide you the pitch indications. There was some fuel drawn from a wrong tank when starting cold and dark, right? Which simply meant that it would pull the fuel from a wrong tank. And the part of the tooltip description for magneto cutoff was not localized, as well as unable to toggle the taxi light in cockpit. Must use key binding. Then the Hercules Spruce Goose camera quick views are fixed, and also, as in addition to that, I would say, or as well, right? The engine 5-way throttle fixed when using a gamepad. It was likely not possible. Robin DR400, they fixed the flaps looking misaligned. And Ryan NIP, Spirit of St. Louis, camera quick views, as well as the Wright Flyer, also some quick views. Then coming to the world, there's the more realistic mapping of wavelengths onto RGB values for the ozone layer, scattering, and the sun color, resulting in more realistic colors of the sky and the lightning in the world. So that's a cool fix. Top Gun, already discussed it, right? A specific issue with the Maverick landing, and then the peripherals, various peripheral fixes, including for the Oculus touch left controller, as well as the NTIs and aux fuel pump LEDs are now working properly with the Bravo throttle quadrant. And that's the changes which are, I would say, part of this second update. And if you ask me, I've got a very strong feeling that this could be, I would say, the final release of Flight Simulator update number 14, which is currently in beta, but likely will be, I would say, available pretty soon to all of you so you can test it. So here ends this video where we discussed 2 updates, right? 2 beta updates. The first one was released at the end of November, and the second one was on the 1st of December, which was yesterday. I hope you liked this video. If you liked it, then consider to use the like button. If you got questions or comments, then feel free to post them in the comment box below. And if you want to stay up to date about new videos I'm posting, then make sure that you're subscribing to my channel. Thanks for watching and see you next time.